Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking Business with me, Danny Pardo. I get the pleasure today to chat with Lara, who is currently a marketing assistant, and her journey to get there really does smash through all the stereotypes of quite simply doing your GCSEs, your A levels, going to university, and getting employed. So, without any further ado, let's talk business with Lara. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking Business. We are back chatting to Lara today. Hello, Lara, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much, and thank you so much for joining me for our little chat here as we talk business with you. The reason I contacted Lara was because I saw a LinkedIn post with regards to your journey, shall we say, your career journey and your challenges that you had finding employment. So we're going to get stuck into that in a little bit and talk about kind of the road you've been on and the challenges you've faced and how you've overcome them, because I think that'll be really inspirational and motivational. But I did want to kind of start with who is Lara, so that we know who we're listening or watching. So who is Lara?
So I basically graduated with a degree in publishing at Oxford Brookes University, and before that I did a gap year, and I'm a very sort of sporty person, very sort of confident, loud, quite chatty. Yeah, that's about me.
Oh, fantastic. So you've recently graduated. How recently have you graduated? Like, is that in the last couple of months or year or so? Or?
No, it was 2 years ago, so 2019.
Right. Okay. So pre-COVID. So you got to do the full ceremony. Did you get to do the full ceremony, or did COVID put a stop to that?
No, yeah, I did. Yeah, so it was pre-COVID. So graduated in June of 2019. So very lucky that I got to do that, because quite a lot of my friends who had done a placement actually weren't able to do it the next year. So I found that so upsetting for them and just so frustrating as well, because it's like you work all of your way up to that and then you don't even get to celebrate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I imagine you were probably one of the last cohorts then to actually be able to celebrate. And as we still haven't started them again, you are still the last group of students who were able to do that. So yeah, you just about snuck in there. So, okay, so we've done publishing at university. What about before that? Was it, obviously it was college. What did you study at college?
Yeah, so at A levels, I did English literature and language, maths, and psychology.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But you said you were a sporty person. Is that not a route you fancied going down, or is that more of a hobby rather than a career choice for you?
Yeah, I did think about doing that at GCSE, but it was more of just a hobby that I sort of liked to do rather than actual like a career path, because I was more sort of creative rather than into. I liked biology, but I wasn't really into it that much.
Right. So, I mean, let's skip ahead a little bit to where you currently are then. So we've done college with our A levels. We've done university. You've graduated. Great stuff. And now we're kind of 2 years down the line from that. And we'll fill in the gaps in a few minutes, because I think that's where it's going to get really interesting for us. But also, so what are you doing now then? Are you employed now after this kind of journey you've been on?
Yeah, so I'm a marketing assistant currently at a mortgage broker in London. So I started that job 3-4 weeks ago now. So kind of a really new, and it's really weird starting online as well, because you kind of feel very disconnected from the company, but they've been really, really helpful and they've been absolutely lovely the whole time. And it's just been really nice to actually have something to do 9 to 5.
Fantastic. Yeah, because I imagine, in between graduating and getting to this point, it's been a little bit of a journey for you. So have you had a chance to even go into the offices of who you work for now, or have you been completely online since day one?
Yeah, completely online. So I'm going in on Thursday to sort of do a brainstorm with them. But apart from that, no, I literally haven't been in this whole time. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Do you feel like you're missing out on things by doing that?
A little bit, but I think because the whole office isn't in, I don't feel like I'm missing out too much. So I think if half of them were in and half of them weren't, then a little bit. But I think because we're all online, it's sort of made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I guess you're all kind of having the same challenges and struggles and victories. There's going to be good things that come from it as well. So, okay, so well, we've got a gap here then of about 18 months or so to kind of fill in. And as we get to that, I mean, you said you did a gap year. Was that in between college and university?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So I actually did, I retook my A levels twice because I wasn't very well at the time. So I had to retake them. And then so I retook them once, and then I did a gap year where I went over to Whistler and I was a ski teacher for little kids, which was just absolutely amazing. And I'm so happy that I did it. It was just an amazing opportunity. And even at the time, I was really worried because when I was little, I always thought that I'd go to university at 18, and then I had my whole life like ahead of me after that. But yeah, I was really worried even when I was starting like in my gap year and over in Canada, still worried that when I got to university, I'd be the oldest person there. It would be like really weird to like integrate myself with all of these people who were 2 years younger than me, but it didn't feel like that at all. As soon as I got to university, I slotted in with the people that I really fit with, especially on my course. And then I also went into different clubs. So I was on the ski society, and I actually got onto the committee, and that was just an amazing experience as well. So I think at the time, it was literally the end of the world, me having to resit my exams, my A levels, but then it actually turned out to be like my saving grace, because it completely, especially from being really ill, my confidence was completely knocked. So it really, really brought back my confidence to actually have that year, have that 6 months away, completely away from studying, away from everything, to just sort of find myself again. That's really cheesy, but yeah.
No, you're right. Sometimes you don't realize you need that time until you actually do it, and then afterwards you think, well, that was possibly the best decision I've ever made. And you're proof here of this route, that the stereotypical view that you do your GCSEs and then it all goes well, and then you do your A levels, and then it all goes well, and then you go to university, and then it all goes well, and you end up in the job that you love forever, and you spend 45 years there. This kind of image of what education is supposed to be like, and within the space of 4 or 5 minutes you've already kind of thrown that completely on its head, which is great, because that is what happens, isn't it? It's what happened to you, and you're proof of it.
Gotta sort of roll with them. Like I said, at the time it was just awful and I was stressing out the whole time, but now I realized that it was just something that I needed to do, and it was actually saved me.
Yeah, fascinating that the things that can come and save you that would be maybe the least, if you took that decision 6 months earlier and somebody had said, just go to Canada for 6 months, you would have gone, no, that's not going to happen. That doesn't make any sense. So that's great that was able to help you kind of overcome some of those issues that you've got going on there. So, all right, so we've had to resit A levels. So now we're getting a bit older from everybody else. You've taken a year out, and like you say, you're a bit older than everybody else and not fitting the stereotype of you go to university and you do Freshers Week and you're 18 and all those kind of things. So let's get stuck into them. This the LinkedIn message that I saw. I can't remember how I saw it or who I saw it from. Must be some of the marketing connections we have together. And I just saw all these numbers that said how many jobs you'd applied for and how many kind of rejection letters you'd got, and how long it had taken you to get employed. So do you remember how many jobs you applied for in that space of time there?
I think I lost count after 200, honestly. It literally got to that point because I did previously have a job pretty much almost straight out of uni. And it was also in a marketing agency. And I was working sort of on the LinkedIn service there. But then when March hit and COVID hit, half the company was put on furlough. And then in August, then half the company was made redundant. So I had that period of time whilst I was on furlough where it sort of started to sink in that I needed to apply for jobs because my furlough was coming to an end. And I needed to find something else to sort of that suited me. And I think I started applying for jobs maybe in June or July. And yeah, it got to over 200 applications, and not that many people came back to me with rejections either. So you were literally just sending your application off into the abyss, hoping for someone to come back to you with something, and most of the time no one ever did. So
oh wow, 200. I mean, I do a little activity with my students where I say how many jobs I've had, and I've had, I think it's 21 jobs now. You know, and they go 21, oh, I'm never going to have that many, you know, with this belief that you'll just apply for a job and get it. And you know, you're talking 200. I mean, how demoralizing is it when you spend all that time doing applications and cover letters and you know, personalizing them to the different businesses, and then you don't even get anything? What's the feeling like around that?
yeah, I think it's really frustrating, and like you said, just demoralizing. I think it got to a point where I was just clicking like fast apply on LinkedIn. Like I literally got to a point where I couldn't even be bothered to I'd look at the description of the job description, but I was like, what's the point in even looking at the description when they're probably not even going to get back to me? So it got to that point. But then when someone did come back to me and I got an interview, that then sort of picked me back up again. And I think the first time I got rejected from an interview, I was disheartened, but then a lot of people said to me, it's a learning process. The more interviews you do, the better you get at them, which I actually felt. Like the first time I was literally shaking like a leaf. Like I was shaking so much. I was so nervous. But then the next one I did, I was shaking a little bit less and I was a lot more confident. I knew what I was going to say. And then this one, then that I got the actual job for, I felt in myself a lot more confident, and actually the things that I was saying, I actually believed.
Nice. I mean, yeah, that kind of, an interview isn't practice. You still want the job,
Yeah.
but in a certain extent, if you can switch your mind to think that way, that okay, yes, I didn't get it, and the reasons are this, so that next time I don't do those things. And you know, those nerves at interviews are something that can't be kind of understated, can they? You know, it is very nerve-wracking, and even more so, you know, if you've tried so hard to get to that interview, and then the pressure's on you to have those 20 minutes where you are spot on with everything. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. Did you feel the pressure, like the pressure on you to get employed, was that kind of steady and pretty high, or was it kind of up and down, a bit of a roller coaster? Because this is during the pandemic, isn't it? We're talking June, July, August 2020. So we're in that summer phase of the global pandemic. So what was that kind of pressure on you to get employed feeling like over the course of that time?
I think to start with, I really felt the pressure because I wanted a job, and I'm very much the type of person who thrives off being busy and loves being busy, loves having things to do. So basically having all of this time to myself and not being able to do anything, not being able to work on something new, kind of was really disheartening and really frustrating for me, which is why I then picked up a load of freelance work to sort of work on and build up my experience. I think I was working with at least 3 or 4 different companies in different areas of what they needed. So that sort of tied me over for a bit. But in terms of the actual pressure, I think, yeah, like you said, it was quite up and down, just because my parents were really supportive the whole time. They said, there's no need for you to get a job right now. You are safe, you're absolutely fine. But I think it was pressure within myself. Like I needed this job, I wanted a new job, I wanted something new to work on. But then every time I'd sort of get disheartened, I'd then be like, oh, what's the point? Like no point in even trying. Yeah. But I think it sort of helped me understand and grow a bit, and actually just sort of figure out myself as well. Like that time away, and that sort of, it gave me that sort of breather, because I think I had a lot of full-on things. The whole 3 years at university was very full-on, and then I got into the job, and then having that breather sort of helped me learn a few things about myself. And I think the pressure started to go down quite a bit coming into the new year, because I'd still be applying for all of these jobs, but then I was like, at the moment, it doesn't matter if I don't have a job right now. I am, as much as I am frustrated that I don't have one, I'm okay. And I am okay with the fact that I don't have a job.
Yeah, and it's great that you've got that support network there for you, and that's obviously played a big part in it. Looking back over, say, the past 12 months or so, and the learning that you've done that you never thought that you needed to, and learn things about yourself that you didn't know were there. Is there anything you would have done differently in hindsight? I mean, you talked about picking up freelance work and kind of keeping in the marketing game with regards to that. Looking back, is there anything you would have or even could have done differently over the past 12 months or so?
I don't think so. I think I probably would have picked up more freelance work, honestly. Like, I think I definitely could have done that. But I think in the back of my mind, the reason I didn't, because I wanted to make sure that I was free to then get a job. So I wanted to make sure that I could easily drop the people who I was doing the freelancing for, because the stuff that I was doing was only bits and pieces. It wasn't like, a couple of things were like constant social media posts, but that could easily be transferred over to someone else. So I think in the back of my mind, I said that I didn't need any more freelance work because I wanted to make sure that I could free myself up to then go into the job. So I think I probably would have done a bit more freelance work just to keep myself busy. But other than that, I don't think so. There's nothing more that I could have done to get a job, just because of the actual scope of everything that was going on. It was a lot of it wasn't my fault, just because a lot of the jobs that I was applying for, I probably would have gotten interviews for them, but because so many people lost their jobs, a lot of people who had more experience than me, were higher up than me, were applying for those jobs that I was applying for because they knew that they would be able to get that job, because it was sort of an easy job that they then could sort of piggyback off onto another place. So I think looking back, there's nothing that I would have changed apart from getting the more freelance work, I think.
Yeah, and the freelance is a tricky one as well, because you might get tied down to a contract for, say, 4 weeks or so, and then the job that you really want comes up, and then you're in a bit of a bind that you can't let other people down. I mean, you've got your reputation on the line and things. So you started talking there about kind of the marketing, the freelance work. So what do you do now? What does a marketing assistant actually do? If you don't mind me being so straight up front with the question there.
That's all right. So currently I am doing different dog. I'm
going to leave that in. That's brilliant. I wonder why did you say that? I wonder. I can't think.
Sorry. Yeah, different blog posts that we get in, I proofread them and then I send them back to compliance to make sure that they are actually okay to send out. I do social media posts each week, and currently we're updating a lot of our documents. So I'm utilising the experience that I got from university with InDesign and Photoshop, and utilising that to basically create these documents that are more like updated and like they look nicer, rather than it just being a Word document. It's like an actual really nice PDF. So yeah.
And I think what you do as well is, and I've come across this a bit recently, is a job like yours and all the stuff that you do, we just take for granted because things just appear. Blogs appear, social media posts appear, tweets, Instagram posts, etc., etc. They just appear, and it's hard for us sometimes, especially as students or even as a teacher, to think, okay, well, why is that there? Who created that? What's the message is trying to convey? And there's so much behind it. And again, it's a thing we've teaching that one of the things we say is that we are training students and preparing them for jobs that don't exist yet. And if you'd said to me 10, 15 years ago, so if you could train somebody how to create social media posts, you would have gone, well, that's not a job. But now, it's a massive part of the world we live in because we spend so much time on social media, don't we? So you are actually getting paid then to create social media posts. Is that part? That's part of your job, correct?
Yeah. So it's only LinkedIn and Twitter posts, but I have experience with Instagram as well and Facebook.
Right. And is that kind of Is that do you have like a message from a particular business or a client that then has to be worded in an appropriate way and given out to the right people? Is that kind of a process that you go through when you're creating something like that? Or do you just sit there and go, that'll do?
I think it depends. So with my freelance work, a lot of the stuff was based on the blogs that we were posting out. So a blog would come up onto the website, and then I'd post it on social media and on Facebook and Instagram, to then sort of make more people see it, and our followers see it, for them to then click on to go to the website and actually read the blog. But currently with what we're doing now, it's basically like reach more people and educate them on the financial stuff that we do, on the financial services that we're sort of involved in with the mortgage, with all of the mortgage news that we put out. So it's more, right now, it's more for education with our followers.
So what makes a good social media post then? What, if you have to, I presume that at some point maybe a manager sits with you and talks about the engagement of your posts and how many likes and shares it got, and did it drive clients towards the business and sell the business? Kind of what criteria do you use then for this was an effective social media post?
Yeah, I think normally, personally, what I do is, especially if it's about a blog post, I make sure to put in a bit of detail, but not too much detail, about what the actual blog post is about, to actually intrigue the person who's reading the post. So you want to create as much intrigue as you can for them to then click on the post, but then not too little for them, or not too much for them to be like, oh, I know what that post is about, it doesn't matter. And then not too little for them to be like, oh, that's not worth my time. So you have to have that like perfect spot of the right amount of sort of interest to create with the people who you're posting them out to.
What's the learning curve been like for you? So to graduate and then have the time looking for jobs and freelancing, and then bang, you're in full-time work. What's your learning curve been like these first few weeks for you working in industry?
I think it's been a bit different from my previous role that I had. So the one that I worked in, I was there for 6 months. But it's been very different because it's quite a different role. So actually learning about the business, and especially in the sector that I'm in, like I've never worked in financial services before. So that's been a massive learning curve, because there's a lot more to do with regulations and actually what we're allowed to post out. And to make sure that what we're posting out doesn't sort of lead people astray, because you can't have that with a mortgage broker. You can't give people the wrong information. So like you can do that potentially with other companies, and they'll just sort of scratch it out and be like, oh, we're so sorry about this. Whereas with the financial services, you can actually get pulled up about it, especially if it's on your website. You can actually get like certain people say and actually like report you, which is not great, which is why we have a compliance team, which is why we have people looking over and constantly looking over our posts, especially the blog posts, to make sure that what we're saying is correct.
Wow. So again, that thing where it's just a blog, I'm just reading a blog, the amount of people that must have gone through, and documents that you've checked it with, and the legal guidelines, and all the years of experience and of the staff members actually doing that is quite intense. Again, we just take it for granted, guilty as charged kind of thing here. I'm not saying this is all on students. I just see things, and to consider how much has had to go into that is really quite intense. And it leads on nicely to one of the next questions. So how important is it then to get that message right? I mean, you spoke about the legal ramifications, that there could be people making formal official complaints to you and what that might lead to. So how important is it then that somebody like you gets that message right for your business?
Yeah, like I said, extremely important. So like I said, we have the compliance team who make sure to look over all of the documents that we have, all of our social media posts, all of the blogs that go out as well. So I proofread them, and then my manager proofreads them, and then my manager's manager proofreads them, and then they also go to the compliance team, which then makes sure that there's not anything like misinformation, or even like leading people to potentially get into debt, like getting credit cards out, all of this like information that to me, like I said, it's like been a massive learning curve, because to me, I wouldn't have thought that was a big deal. But now I realize that it is, because you can't say that to people, because you're a mortgage broker, because you're very like high up in, like, especially being one of the leading mortgage brokers as well, people take your word for it. So they might think, oh, that's the best decision for me, but it actually might not be. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Wow, and that's a lot of people involved there. But and again, but that's the element of teamwork and the importance of communication, that you have that because of the importance of making sure that your message is on point, and that you're still essentially driving business and driving clients and customers towards your business, as well as all that compliance that you're having to do. So in terms of social media then, kind of two quick questions about this. How important then for, actually, let me ask the next one. I'm going to change the questions around a bit here. So where do you see kind of like your role then and social media going in, say, like the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, you're obviously a bit younger than me, having just graduated, and I graduated many years ago. Gosh, 20 years ago. Sorry, just went off on my head there. So, you're kind of 20 years behind me, but you're much more up to date with social media, and you've kind of, I guess you've kind of grown up with it and become used to it as you've grown up. So where do you see it going, say, in the next 5 to 10 years or so? Is that something that you've had to think about for your business?
Not particularly with my business, but in terms of myself, I think it's changed massively, even within the last like year, 2 years, because I think a lot of social media have started to become self-aware of themselves, and actually aware of how damaging they can actually be to younger people, to myself, to literally anybody. So having to actually regulate themselves on a constant basis, like with influencers having to say that they are actual ads rather than, because people are easily influenced. I didn't realize how easy I was influenced. I think I watched a YouTube video the other day, and the person said it wasn't an ad for this product, but then I saw them using it and I was like, oh my gosh, I really want one now. So it's really difficult for influencers. If they don't say it's an ad, then they can come under really sort of bad things. But in terms of where it's going in the next 5 to 10 years, I honestly don't know, because it's such a fast moving platform that it literally could go anywhere. I mean, I was talking to people about it, and people thought that we'd have phones in our hands at this point, so it could literally go anywhere. Like, and I think with also Alexa and things like that, having that in-home sort of device with you all the time to ask for you to ask them questions, for you, it's a really interesting concept. And personally, I actually have no idea where it's going to go, but I think it's really, really good that they are becoming a lot more self-aware of themselves. And like I said, like how damaging it can be to people, especially Instagram. Like the other ones, like the other platforms aren't too bad, but Instagram themselves, with all the filters and editing the photos and everything, you just don't realize that that's actually not what people look like in real life. So I think I saw a blog recently where they're actually wanting people to say that their photos are edited, because it completely influences young people's minds to the point where it's actually awfully damaging, where they have developed like body dysmorphia and eating disorders, and it's just awful. So I think, like I said, just becoming more self-aware is the main thing.
Yeah, and that's great that they are. I mean, it's a shame it's taken such high profile cases for that to happen and to force them into doing those things. But you're right, 10, 15 years ago, to get that kind of quality, you would need to be a professional Adobe Photoshop designer, wouldn't you? You need to be an illustrator to be able to use software and things to do that. But now, touch of a button, even I was playing around with it the other day, and I was amazed because the students were telling me about it, and I thought, I've got to try this. But it really is, I can do it in about 30 seconds and change my complete appearance. And I'm thinking, wow, if I can do it, anybody can really do this. And you're right, that the influence you have when you see celebrities and stars and musicians and actors and the power they have is really quite astounding. So let's hope, social media continues this trend. As hard as it is to predict, TikTok obviously blowing up the last year or two, and what's going to be the next thing that we haven't heard of yet, and this time next year everybody's going to be on it.
Yeah, I mean, that blows my mind. TikTok just blows my mind how much influence it has on things, how small creators can have suddenly within a month can have their song in the top 100. And I don't know if you saw the whole thing with the little moons. It's like this little mochi ice cream, and essentially I think it was popular, but then it got to a point where people were posting videos of them on TikTok, and it was sold out everywhere. So I think they sold them in Tesco's, Sainsbury's, and potentially M&S, I think, but everywhere was sold out. Like, even the stores put out an actual disclaimer saying, if you're looking for these little moons, they're actually not in our stores anymore. We just can't actually get any more. And it just blows my mind how much influence it actually has.
Yeah, and that's come along it feels to me it's come along so quickly. Obviously, it kind of really launched, didn't it, at the start of lockdown last year? But it's really still a massive presence, and obviously a huge make or break situation for a lot of businesses by the sounds of it. So I mean, when it comes to social media, then if I could ask you a bit of advice then for the students here, I mean, how important is it then for students to be kind of self-aware of their own social media presence? Obviously, you've got a LinkedIn profile. I don't know if you have the other profiles, and are you conscious of the things that you're posting? Are you having to think, oh my gosh, well, now I'm representing a business? So what's your advice for kind of my students and everybody, your kind of age, in terms of their social media presence and being self-aware of it?
Yeah, I think it does depend on what sector they want to go into. So say if it's legal, say if it's like the financial services, I think you have to be hyper aware of what you're posting, even if you're tagged in a photo and it's of you. It depends. Like, I think I've seen like situations where they'll just have someone will just have a glass of wine in their hand or a cocktail in their hand, and a company will be like, no, you can't have that. You need to be untagged. You need to delete that photo. So I think it does depend on the industry. With the creative industry, I feel like it's not as much. However, I'm still very aware of what I'm posting. Anything that I post on LinkedIn, because that's more of a professional platform that stays professional, like no personal things apart from that post that I posted, no personal things goes on there. And then with Facebook, I don't really use that much anymore, only if people tag me in photos. And I've actually recently gone through my photos to make sure that anything that I'm tagged in isn't of me like looking really like drunk or bad or whatever. And Instagram, I don't particularly post on Instagram that much, just because I have been affected by what I said previously with getting likes and stuff like that. So I think I only post, I'm starting to get a bit better with it, but I only mostly post sort of personal things like updating people about my life, stuff to do with uni. But obviously recently there hasn't been much to post about, so I haven't really posted that much.
We haven't had to worry about posting nights out and all those kind of things, because nobody's been able to have one, have they, for so many months? So I'm sure there'll be a surge at some point in Instagram posts about people's evenings out. So I mean, that's really interesting in terms of, you do have to be aware, don't you? You've got to be conscious of what you're doing. Yes, it's a great tool. It's a great social tool, connecting tool, relationship building tool. But at some point, employers might be Googling you, and you're going to have to look out for that. Do you know if you've ever been Googled by an employer? Do you know if you've ever had that?
Actually, and if they have, they've never told me. So I'm not entirely sure if or not. I have Googled myself to see what would come up, to see just in case, and it's actually not that bad. Like, there's quite a lot of people, which I didn't realize, called Lara Kelly, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. So I think because my Facebook is private, it's not as bad, but my Instagram isn't private. But I'd say if you are conscious of it, just put your Instagram to private, because then no one can actually see it. So, and then you can essentially post whatever you want, because then no one can actually see it or get onto it unless you they request and then you accept. So yeah.
Okay, fascinating. So as we come to the end here, I'm going to ask you one last question, if that's all right, Lara. Firstly, thank you for all your answers so far and your honesty. Really appreciate it. So this last question then, I haven't prepped you for this. I'm just throwing it straight at you. So no apologies either. So here we go. Last question. If you could go back to your kind of 17, 18-year-old self and give yourself some advice, or you wish somebody had given you some advice that you took on board and lived with and became kind of your mantra, what would that advice be to 17, 18-year-old Lara?
I think probably everything's going to be okay. Literally that simple, because like I said, the whole time throughout my life, rubbish things have happened, and I'm now here and everything is okay. Everything's going great. I'm essentially going to be moving to London soon, which is one of my big dreams that I wanted to do. I'm in a great company and everything. I don't particularly like everything happens for a reason, but everything's going to be okay sort of is that middle ground where the things that happen to you sort of make you the person that you are. And I remember people saying that to me and I was like, no, don't say that. Like, that's such a silly thing to say. Like, I don't believe it. But now sitting here, it's like a completely different story. And I actually am like, no, that's a really good advice.
It's funny, isn't it, how that perspective comes along, and you know, sometimes we're receptive to it, we're in the right place to be receptive to it, and we've reached the right age and kind of career path, and other times it's like, please stop giving me advice, you know. I've heard it, yeah, which is why I asked the question, because you know, students hear it a lot from me. And I'm like, oh, he's talking again, you know. So to hear it from you is really appreciated. So thank you for your honesty throughout this conversation. Really do appreciate it, and the time you've taken to discuss your career journey, which has not been the advertised straight line that a lot of students receive. And it's nice to hear that everything will be okay.
Exactly, yeah.
There we go. Brill. So what I'll do is then I'll stop this recording, stay on the line just for a minute or two. We'll say a proper cheerio. But for now, I'll say thank you very much for talking business. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you again, Lara. Cheerio. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Everything is going to be okay. I think that's advice that I need to take on board a little bit more as well. So thank you, Lara, for sharing that with us. And thank you for sharing your story through all those job applications and all the different routes that you've taken to get to where you currently are. I really do appreciate you taking the time. And to everybody else listening and watching, thank you to you too. I hope you enjoyed what you heard and you get a lot out of it. And you can say hello and interact on all the social media channels. Feel free to say hello. Have a look for Mr. Pardo's business. Have a look on the Talking Business podcast.com, and I will see you again for another episode of Talking Business with me, Danny Pardo. Thank you very much. Cheerio.